the table, the ass, and the stick. So an ass is like kind of like a donkey. There was once an old tailor who had 3 sons and 1 goat. And as the goat nourished them all with her milk, she was obliged to have good food, and so she was led every day down to the willows by the waterside. And this business the sons did in turn. One day the eldest took the goat to the churchyard, where the best sprouts are, that she might eat her fill and gambol about. Ooh, that's a rare word to use these days. In the evening, when it was time to go home, he said, "Well, goat, have you had enough?" The goat answered, "I am so full I cannot pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and he fastened a string to her, led her to her stall, and fastened her up. With a string? "Now," said the tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she no more can pull." But the father, wishing to see for himself, went out to the stall, stroked his dear goat, and said, "My dear goat, are you full?" And the goat answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "What is this that I hear?" cried the tailor, and he ran and called out to the youth, "Oh, you liar, to say that the goat was full, and she was hungry all the time." And in his wrath he took up his yardstick and drove his son out of the house with many blows. The next day came the turn of the second son, and he found a fine place in the garden hedge, where there were good green sprouts, and the goat ate them all up. In the evening, when he came to lead her home, he said, "Well, goat, have you had enough?" And the goat answered, "I am so full I cannot pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and led her home and tied her up. How far did he go? Found a fine place in the garden hedge. Is that very far? "Now," said the old tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she no more can pull." The tailor, not feeling satisfied, went out to the stall and said, "My dear goat, are you really full?" And the goat answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "The good-for-nothing rascal," cried the tailor, "to let the dear creature go hungry." And running back, he chased the youth with his yardstick out of the house. So I want to point out 2 things. Number 1 is the goat hasn't eaten in 2 days. That might be something to learn about. So did the father go and take the goat out himself? Because he values the goat more than his son, apparently. And the reason I wondered how far it was to go to the garden is he could go there because it says green sprouts and the goat ate them all up. So probably there's evidence that there was eating going on there. And if the son's going to get beaten by his dad, he could, first off, "Dad, why are you trusting a talking goat?" Second off, "Hey, look over there, it's goat having eaten stuff over there, go look." Then came the turn of the third son, who, meaning to make all sure, found some shrubs with the finest sprouts possible, and left the goat to eat them. In the evening, when he came to lead her home, he said, "Well, goat, are you full?" And the goat answered, "I am so full I cannot pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah." "Then come home," said the youth, and he took her to her stall and fastened her up. "Now," said the old tailor, "has the goat had her proper food?" "Oh," answered the son, "she is so full she no more can pull." I got it right this time. But the tailor, not trusting his word, went to the goat and said, "My dear goat, are you really full?" The malicious animal answered, "How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah." "Oh, the wretches!" cried the tailor. The one is good for nothing and careless as the other. I will no longer have such fools about me. And rushing back, in his wrath, he laid about him with his yardstick, and belaboured his son's back so unmercifully that he ran away out of the house. So the old tailor was left alone with the goat. The next day he went out to the stall, and let out the goat, saying, Come, my dear creature, I will take you myself to the willows. So he led her by the string, and brought her to the green hedges and pastures, where there was plenty of food to her taste, and said to her, Now for once you can eat to your heart's content. He left her there till the evening. Then he returned and said, Well, goat, are you full? She answered, I am so full I cannot pull another blade of grass. Bah, bah. Then come home, said the tailor, and leading her to her stall, he fastened her up. Before he left her, he turned once more, saying, Now then, for once you are full. But the goat actually cried, How can I be full? There was nothing to pull, though I looked all about me. Bah, bah. When the tailor heard that, he marveled, and saw at once that his 3 sons had been sent away without reason. Wait a minute, cried he, you ungrateful creature. It is not enough merely to drive you away. I will teach you to show your face again amongst honorable tailors. Okay, what? Okay. So in haste he went and fetched his razor, and seizing the goat, he shaved her head as smooth as the palm of his hand. And as the yardstick was too honorable a weapon, he took the whip and fetched her such a crack that with many a jump and spring she ran away. The tailor felt very sad as he sat alone in his house, and he would willingly have had his sons back again, but no one knew where they had gone, so he could not send for them. The eldest son, breathing and talking his heart, so I yawn. The eldest son, when he was driven from his home, apprenticed himself to a joiner and applied himself diligently to his trade. I want to learn what a joiner is. Let's go find out what a joiner is. Me with my wonderful planning. Like so. Is that good? Clicking on window. A person who constructs the wooden components of a building, such as stairs, doors, and door and window frames. Okay. Okay, I get it. That's cool. I learned everything. As usual, it's worth taking a moment. I thought it was, I knew it was carpentry, but I thought it was like a furniture thing. So he apprenticed himself to a joiner, and when the time came for him to travel, his master gave him a little table, nothing much to look at, and made of common wood. But it had one great quality. When anyone set it down and said, "Table, be covered," all at once the good little table had a clean cloth on it, and a plate, and a knife and fork, and dishes with roast and boiled meat, and a large glass of red wine sparkling so as to cheer the heart. That is awesome. How small? If that's like a little table, then that would be awesome. Yeah, it was a little table. It's like a one-person table. It's like a TV tray. Okay. The young apprentice thought he was set up for life. Yeah. And went merrily out into the world, and he never cared whether an inn were good or bad, or whether he could get anything to eat there or not. He's just a dude walking around with a table, just nothing to see there. When he was hungry, it did not matter where he was, whether in the fields, in the woods, or in a meadow. He set down his table and said, "Be covered," and there he was provided with everything that heart could wish. At last it occurred to him that he would go back to his father, whose wrath might by this time have subsided, and perhaps because of the wonderful table, he might receive him again gladly. Wow, some of the English is a little bit awkward here. It happened that one evening during his journey home, he came to an inn that was quite full of guests, who bade him welcome and asked him to sit down with them and eat, as otherwise he would have found some difficulty in getting anything. Did I miss my place? Okay. He could go back to his father. Came to an inn who just has too many people in it. Oh. Okay, so the inn is full and there's so many people that he has to go and like, he doesn't know anybody, so he wants to go and meet some people at the inn. And they're like, come and sit with us. You weirdo with the table. Is he like, does he change hands? His like really big blacksmith arm is his only carrying it with one arm, or what? No, answered the young joiner. I could not think of depriving you. You had much better be my guests. Then they laughed and thought he must be joking, but he brought his little wooden table and put it in the middle of the room and said, table, be covered. I would never reveal that kind of secret, personally. I'd be like, I've also wondered, like, where do the dishes and stuff go? And how frequently could he use the thing? Because theoretically, he could feed a lot of other people, and he'd have like dinnerware that he could sell off. I mean, just a thought. You could have like a little boutique somewhere and selling your spoons one at a time. So table be covered. Immediately it was set with food much better than the landlord had been able to provide. Now he's competition again. He better be tipping the house. Fall to, good friends, said the joiner, and the guests, when they saw how it was, needed no second asking, but taking up knife and fork, fell to valiantly. And the guests, when they saw how it was, needed no second asking, but taking up knife and fork, fell to valiantly? That's a really awkward sentence. And what seemed most wonderful was that when a dish was empty, immediately a full one stood in its place. Told ya. All the while the landlord stood in a corner and watched all that went on. He did not know what at all to say about it, but thought, such cooking as that would make my inn prosper. Yeah, for sure. That's why he needs to keep that. You know, if you ever get a magic table, you keep it a secret. That's kind of important. Kind of like patenting something you invent. The joiner and his companions kept it up very merrily until late at night. At last they went to sleep, and the young joiner, going to bed, left his wishing table standing against the wall. The landlord, however, could not sleep for thinking of the table, and he remembered that there was in his lumber room an old table very like it. You're not going to fool a joiner because he's like working with wood for a living. So he fetched it, took away the joiner's table, and left the other in its place. The next morning the joiner paid his reckoning, took up the table, not dreaming that he was carrying off the wrong one, and went on his way. About noon he reached home, and his father received him with great joy. Oh. Now, my dear son, what have you learned? Said he. I have learned to be a joiner, father, he answered. That is a good trade, returned the father, but what have you brought back with you from your travels? It's like, I went on vacation to France, I came back with a table. That's the weirdest. The best thing I've got, father, is this little table, said he. The tailor looked at it on all sides and said, you have certainly produced no masterpiece. It is a shabby old table. Actually, wasn't it supposed to be new? Okay, so joiner. And when the time came for him to travel, his master gave him a little table. Okay. Right? Okay. So we don't know if it's old or not. So we're learning it's old. It's a shabby old table, but it is a very wonderful one, answered the son. When I set it down and tell it to be covered, at once the finest meats are standing on it, and wine so good that it cheers the heart. Let us invite all the friends and neighbors that they may feast and enjoy themselves, for the table will provide enough for all. When the company was all assembled, he put his table in the middle of the room and said, "Table, be covered." But the table never stirred and remained just as empty as any other table that does not understand talking. When the poor joiner saw that the table remained unfurnished, he felt ashamed to stand there like a fool. The company laughed at him freely, and were obliged to return unfilled and uncheered to their houses. I don't know, that was pretty funny, but it was a bit of a waste of an evening when you expected to be fed. The father gathered his pieces together and returned to his tailoring, and the son went to work under another master. Okay, so due to a lying goat, the father beat that son and drove him out of his house for long enough that he went and apprenticed somewhere instead of like trying to come back or anything like that. Now that same kid comes back, so we know the father's personality. Even though the father ended up learning his lesson, we don't know that he softened somehow. There was no like resolution as to, oh, sorry, the goat was lying. My talking goat. And what happened to the talking goat. But the son comes back, fools the father, and the father just like carries on with his day, and the son leaves. Like he should pull out the yardstick again, at least. That's what the character's like. But, fairy tales, consistency, whatever. We don't need no writing. Okay, so the father gathered his pieces together and returned to his tailoring, and the son went to work under another master. The second son had bound himself as apprentice to a miller, and when his time was up, his master said to him, "As you have behaved yourself so well, I will give you an ass of a remarkable kind. He will draw no cart and carry no sack." "What is the good of him, then?" asked the young apprentice. "He spits out gold," answered the miller. "If you put a cloth before him and say, 'Bricklebrit,' out come gold pieces." Why would you give that away if you've got that? Actually, why would the table have been given away? I never did understand that kind of thing. Here, let me give you a greater artifact. "That is a capital thing," said the apprentice, and thanking his master, he went out into the world. Capital, that's interesting. That continued to be used in British English. It never made it over to Canada and the United States. And I don't know if that's used in Australia and New Zealand, or if whatever lingering variation of English stayed in, say, India, for example, or any of the other former colonies. If the phrase "that is capital," kept being used, because we know what a capital is. It's just people using it to refer to other things, not just a place. Whenever he wanted gold, he had only to say "Bricklebrit" to his ass, and there was a shower of gold pieces. Wait. Gold pieces, many gold pieces. And so he had no cares as he traveled about. Wherever he went, he lived on the best, and the dearer the better, as his purse was always full. And when he had been looking about the world a long time, he thought he would go and seek out his father, who would perhaps forget his anger and receive him kindly because of his gold ass. And it happened that he came into a lodge in the same inn where his brother's table had been exchanged. I wonder if the innkeeper would recognize him, because they're brothers, right? He was leading his ass, and the landlord was about to take the ass from him to tie it up, but the young apprentice said, "Don't trouble yourself, old fellow. I will take him into the stable myself and tie him up." The landlord thought this was very strange, and he never supposed that a man who was accustomed to look after his ass himself could have much to spend. But when the stranger, feeling in his pocket, took out 2 gold pieces and told him to get something good for supper, the landlord stared and ran and fetched the best that he could get, that could be got. After supper, the guest called for the reckoning, and the landlord, wanting to get all the profit he could, said that it would amount to 2 gold pieces more. The apprentice felt in his pocket, but his gold had come to an end. "Wait a moment, landlord," said he. "I will go and fetch some money." And then he went out of the room, carrying the tablecloth with him. Why? Oh, okay, I know why. I already know why. Okay. The landlord could not tell what to make of it, and curious to know his proceeding. Why would he do that? You just bring your empty purse. Okay. And as the guest shut the stable door, he peeped in through a knothole. Then he saw how the stranger spread the cloth before the ass, saying, "Bricklebrit." And directly the ass spat out gold, which rained upon the ground. It's like, okay, gold ass vomit. Okay, got it. "Dear me," said the landlord, "that is an easy way of getting ducats? Ducats. I'm going to learn what that is. I'm not going to share how I learn. Oh, ducat. Oh, man, I was mispronouncing it. Fine. Right? Okay. Gold or silver coin. Okay, yeah. Wow. Okay, well, I was being phonetic. Forgive me, I was being phonetic. A purse of money like that is no bad thing. After that, the guest paid his reckoning and went to bed. But the landlord slipped down to the stable in the middle of the night, led the gold ass away, and tied up another ass in his place. Early the next morning, the apprentice set forth with his ass, never doubting that it was the right one. By noon, he came to his father's house, who rejoiced to see him again and received him gladly. So he's forgiven. Okay. "What trade have you taken up, my son?" he asked. "I am a miller, dear father," answered he. "What have you brought home from your travels?" continued the father. "Nothing but an ass," answered the son. "We have plenty of asses here," said the father. "You had much better have brought me a nice goat." Because he, shaved the head of the previous goat. "Yes," answered the son, "but this is no common ass. When I say Bricklebrit, the good creature spits out a whole clothful of gold pieces. Let me call all the neighbors together. I will make rich people of them all." Now, he just said Bricklebrit and it didn't happen. Unless, I guess he put away the ass before going in and meeting the father, so the ass couldn't hear. Let's assume. "That will be fine," said the Okay, I guess somebody who had a talking goat is open to the idea of a ducat vomiting ass, but I'd have a demonstration right. I wouldn't. Why would the father tell his friends? Honestly, you just keep that way a secret. Then you have friends that constantly dropping by to "Hey, bro, can I have some money? Kind of out." "That will be fine," said the tailor. "Then I need labor no more at my needle." And he rushed out himself and called the neighbors together. As soon as they were all assembled, the miller called out to them to make room, and brought in the ass and spread his cloth before him. "Now pay attention," said he, and cried, "Bricklebrit, but no gold pieces came, and that showed and that showed that the animal was no more scientific than any other ass. That is the weirdest expression. That showed that the animal is no more scientific than any other ass. So the poor miller made a long face when he saw that he had been taken in by his second son, and begged pardon of the neighbors, who all went home as poor as they had come. And there was nothing for it, but that the old man must take to his needle again, and that the young one should take the service with a miller. Is that the youngest brother? I thought that was the middle brother. The third brother had bound himself apprentice to a turner. Okay, what's turner? One who uses a lathe for turning. Not to be confused with Turing. No, Turing is kind of different. Well, okay, so, well, I know this is used for posts, for like banisters. Would that be the correct term? That's a pretty specific. That's a really specific, like, job to apprentice to. And as turning is a very ingenious handicraft, it took him a long time to learn it. His brothers told him in a letter how badly things had gone with them, and how on the last night of their travels the landlord deprived them of their treasures. How did they know that? And if they know that, why don't they go there and like shank him and take their stuff back? Well, when the young turner had learned... Ow, that was really loud. Thank you, alarm clock. It has been about an hour. His brothers told him in a letter how badly things had gone with them, and how on the last night of their travels the landlord deprived them of their treasures. When the young turner had learned his trade and was ready to travel, his master, to reward him for his good conduct, gave him a sack, and told him that there was a stick inside it. "I can hang up the sack, and it may be very useful to me," said the young man. "I guess. But what is the good of the stick?" "I will tell you," answered the master. "If anyone does you any harm, and you say, 'Stick, out of the sack,' the stick will jump out upon them, and will belabor them so soundly that they shall not be able to move. And it will not stop until you say, 'Stick, into the sack.' Now, which is magical, the stick or the sack? I'm betting it's the sack." The apprentice thanked him and took up the sack and started on his travels. And did he become a bandit? That would be like the banditry tool. Okay. And when anyone attacked him, he would say, "Stick, out of the sack," and directly out jumped the stick, and dealt a shower of blows on the coat or jerkin and the back beneath, which quickly ended the affair. One evening the young turner reached the inn where his two brothers had been taken in. He laid his knapsack on the table and began to describe all the wonderful things he had seen in the world. I think I'll have to make this my last story. "Yes," said he, "you may talk of your self-spreading table, your gold-supplying ass, and so forth. Very good things, I do not deny, but they are nothing in comparison with the treasure that I have acquired and carry with me in that sack." Okay, Here I'm confused. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so the apprentice was traveling. He's using the sack, the stick. He gets to the inn. Puts the knapsack on the table, which you shouldn't do because that's kind of rude. And describes, so he's telling some tales. Yes, said he. Who's he talking to? I don't know who. So okay, I don't know. So maybe he's talking to some other people there. Yes, said he. Okay, etc., etc. Then the landlord opened his ears. Now, I'm still confused. That's okay. What in the world can it be? Thought he. Very likely the sack is full of precious stones. I think you could tell. And I have a perfect right to it, for all good things come in threes. When bedtime came, the guest stretched himself on a bench and put his sack under his head for a pillow. And the landlord, when he thought the young man was sound asleep, came, stooped down, and pulled gently at the sack so as to remove it cautiously, and put another in its place. That. But if he doesn't know what's in the sack, how do you replace it? This is like an Indiana Jones moment where he's like, I'll put this sack that has sand under his head. He won't notice. The turner had only been waiting for this to happen, and just as the landlord was giving a last courageous pull, he cried, "Stick out of the sack!" Out flew the stick directly and lay too heartily on the landlord's back. And in vain he begged for mercy. The louder he cried, the harder the stick beat him on his back, until he fell exhausted to the ground. Then the turner said, "If you do not give me the table and ass directly, this game shall begin all over again." "Oh dear," cried the landlord, quite overcome. "I will gladly give it all back again, if you will only make this terrible goblin go back into the sack." Then said the young man, "I will be generous instead of just. But beware." Then he cried, "Stick into the sack." The next morning the turner set out with the table and the ass on his way home to his father. The tailor was very glad indeed to see him again, and asked him what he had learned abroad. "My dear father," answered he, "I am become a turner." "Very ingenious handicraft," said the father. "And what have you brought with you from your travels?" "A very valuable thing, dear father," answered the son. "A stick in a sack." "What?" cried the father. "A stick? The thing is not worth so much when you can cut one from any tree." "But it is not a common stick, dear father," said the young man. "When I say, 'Stick out of the sack,' which he just said, is he carrying the stick? If the stick's got nothing to beat, does he beat the guy that just said that? Out jumps the stick upon anyone who means harm to me, and makes him dance, and does not leave off till he is beaten to the earth and asks pardon. Just look here. With this stick I have recovered the table and the ass which the thieving landlord took from my two brothers. Now let them both be sent for, and bid all the neighbors too, and they shall eat and drink to their heart's content, and I will fill their pockets with gold." The old tailor could not quite believe in such a thing, but he called his sons and all the neighbors together. This guy really doesn't learn. Then the turner brought in the ass, opened a cloth before him, and said to his brother, "Now, my dear brother, speak to him." And the miller said, "Bricklebrit," and immediately the cloth was covered in gold pieces, until they had all got more than they could carry away. I tell you this because it is a pity you were not there. That's it. That's the second time I've seen the actual, the writer the writer of this story talk. Interesting. Then the turner set down the table and said, "Now, my dear brother, speak to it." And the joiner said, "Table, be covered." And directly it was covered and set forth plentifully with the richest dishes. Then they held such a feast as had never taken place in the tailor's house before. And the whole company remained through the night, merry and content. After that the tailor locked up in a cupboard his needle and thread, his yardstick and goose. Goose. What is a goose to a tailor? What is a goose to a tailor? I know what a goose is. Goose. Tailor's goose. Type of flat iron. Oh, really? I didn't know that was called a goose. Type of flat iron or sad iron named for the goose-like curve in its neck. What do you mean goose-like curve in its neck? I want to picture that. Well, that's important. Oh. And in the case of the tailor's goose, its usage by tailors. Okay, so it's an iron. Of course a tailor would have something like that. That makes perfect sense. Cool. I know what a goose is. Maybe I'll remember that. I wonder if that'll be useful anywhere. After that, the tailor locked up in a cupboard his needle and thread, his yardstick and goose, and lived ever after with his 3 sons in great joy and splendor. Technically, the end. But there's more. But wait, there's more. But what became of the goat? Thank you. I was wondering that. But what became of the goat? The unlucky cause of the tailor's sons being driven out. I don't know about, it worked out in the end. Because now they're rich and well fed and have like, what would you call it? Like a mercenary stick? Whatever you want to call it. But what became of the goat, the unlucky cause of the tailor's sons being driven out? I will tell you. She felt so ashamed of her bald head that she ran into a fox's hole and hid herself. When the fox came home, he saw 2 great eyes staring at him out of the darkness and was very frightened and ran away. A bear met him, and seeing that, he looked very disturbed, asked him, What is the matter, brother fox, that you should look like that? Oh dear, answered the fox, a horrible beast is sitting in my hole, and he stared out at me with fiery eyes. We will soon drive him out, said the bear, and went to the hole and looked in. But when he caught sight of the fiery eyes, he likewise felt terror seize him, and not wishing to have anything to do with so grisly a beast, he made off. He was soon met by a bee, who remarked that he had not a very courageous air about him, and said to him, Bear, you have a very depressed countenance. What has become of your high spirit? You may well ask, answered the bear. In the fox's hole there sits a beast with fiery eyes, and we cannot drive him out. The bee answered, I know you despise me, bear, because he protects the honey, right? And bears like honey. I wonder if that's really a thing, or if that's just like a Winnie the Pooh thing. I think it's probably a thing. Because bears are tough and hard to sting, and if I were a bear, honey is awesome stuff. Okay. I know you despise me, bear. I'm a poor, feeble little creature, but I think I can help you. So she flew into so it's a queen bee. So she flew into the fox's hole and, settling on the goat's smooth-shaven head, stung her so severely that she jumped up crying, bah, bah, and ran out like mad into the world. And to this hour, no one knows where she ran. Well, okay, thanks for explaining what happened to the goat. And the moral of this tale is Don't trust the talking goat. Trust your own sons. Yeah, that's